Hello and welcome to this module where we are going to discuss how you can check your project plan after you have assigned resources to the tasks. So far, we have entered so much information about the tasks and about the resources that we have assigned to those tasks. And this information is not readily available in its totality from the individual views. So you need to be able to know where to go if you want to see various pieces of the information, especially regarding to the tasks, the activities, as well as the costs. There are many ways in which we can see the key indicators of a plan in MS Project. So these indicators can help us answer questions such as who is assigned to do what work in the plan, how long will it take to complete the project, how much will it cost, and in addition to the different views, the timeline, project summary task, and project statistics dialog box are all great places to see the key indicators of a plan. So far, we've been moving between different views, but we want now to look at exactly where to go in order to see that information that we've been putting about the resources and their cost. The first view is the cost sheet view. So the cost sheet view answers questions about cost. So the cost table includes various cost values for each subtask. So remember, every place where we have created a summary task, you have subtasks underneath it. So the cost of these subtasks, they roll up to the summary task, and ultimately all the cost values are going to roll up to the project summary task. Then we've got the resource sheet view. So the resource sheet view helps us to shift our focus from a task-centric to a resource-centric view of costs. So in other words, we've been looking at the cost per task, but the resource sheet view helps you to look at costs per resource. Displaying the resource sheet view with the cost table displayed is a good way to see the cost details per resource. So you need to understand that you decide which main view you want to be in. So if you are in the resource sheet view, then you open the cost table, you are going to see costs according to resources. But if you go to the Gantt chart and you open the task table, then from the task table you view the cost sheet. That cost sheet is now going to be oriented towards the tasks. So the task usage view answers questions such as who does what and when. The task usage view helps us to see who is doing what and when. This task usage view is going to group all the resources that have been assigned below each task, and the costs of those resources below the task are then rolled up or summarized at the task level so that you can see what is the total cost per task. Let us now attempt to look at these different views. Remember, if you want to change a view, the first place to go is the View tab. So you go up here on the View tab, and then we look for Task Views. On the Task Views group, you open the filter button, the filter arrow on other views. So you click on this arrow on other views, and then we open the task sheet. Now you can see that it still looks like the previous screen, but the Gantt charts have disappeared from the right hand side. So what we've been working on all the time on the left hand side, this is what we refer to as the task sheet. With this task sheet displayed, we now go back to the View tab. So you go back to the View tab, and then you look for the data group, this data group. And under data group, you click on tables, and from tables, we click on cost. So in other words, we want the cost table. The one which is highlighted now is the entry table, because this is where we enter the data. So we open the cost table, and from there we now see the cost table displayed. So we can expand the columns so that we see everything nicely. So we were saying earlier on that in this view, if we open the cost sheet from a task table, we will see every task and then the costs that are associated with that task. So if you check going to the bottom, you can see that every task has got a summary task on it. We created summary tasks, and then below each summary task you have got the individual tasks. So each individual task is having its own cost. Then we roll up or summarize the costs onto the summary task here. So the same thing here, each individual item has got its own cost. Then we roll up or summarize at the very top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the Gantt chart so that I can show you once again how we got here. So the first thing we did was go to the view, and then we go to the task views, and on task views we opened other views, and then we took the task sheet. And once we were in the task sheet, we went back to the View tab, and then on the data group we opened the tables, and then on the tables we selected the cost table. So that is how we got here. So you need to be comfortable with the idea of moving between the different views, knowing that these views, they like pivot or swing on each other. If I'm on the task view and then I go to the tables and ask for the cost table, it will give me the costs per task. We are going to see shortly that if I'm on the resources table, then I go to the views and ask for a cost table, it will now give me the cost per resource. So I always want to go back to the Gantt chart so that we see how we get to these views from our default location where we are entering details on the project. So next, would like to go to the resource sheet. And remember, the resource sheet, we go there from the view, and then from the resource views, we select the resource sheet. Then once we are in the resource sheet, we now go to view and then tables once again, and then we select the cost table. So now the cost table is now giving us the cost per resource. It is no longer task centric, it is now resource centric. It's now showing us the costs per resource. Now these various columns, I did not discuss them earlier on. The first one is the actual cost that is planned according to the schedule on the project plan. Then the baseline, this would be the cost according to the baseline plan. We have not discussed that yet. It's going to come in the next module, in fact. So I'll leave baseline for now, but it suffices for me to say the baseline is a template or a snapshot of the project plan right at the beginning before we start changing and altering it. So the baseline gives us what was our original plan. And then you have the variance. The variance is the difference between the planned cost and the actual cost. So you can see that we have not yet recorded any actuals. That's why the difference between the planned cost and the actual cost is 64, which is the same as the planned cost. So this is the column that would show us the actual costs, because in another module we are going to be discussing how we actually update these costs as we progress in the project, because these are just plans. They are not the actual expenditure. The actual expenditure will be recorded the moment each task is completed. So we now put the actual cost here. And what is called the remaining is basically the difference between what was planned and the actual that has been spent so far. So in other words, if we had a task that goes for 2 days and the total cost was $10,000, which means $5,000 per day. So if we finished 1 day, this actual cost will now be showing 5,000 for 1 day. And then it will show 5,000 remaining. And then when we finish the second day, the actual cost will now be 10,000, which was the same that we planned for. And then the remaining will now be 0. So this is a very useful view that helps you to see the progress on each task. Okay, let's go and now look at this information from the task usage view. So let me go back to the Gantt chart as usual so that you are able to always navigate from your data entry sheet. So we go to the views, and then On the task views, we select the task usage view. And once we are in the task usage view, you can now go to the view and we go to the data tables, and then we look at the cost. So you can see the procedure is the same, but first you need to check the view from where you want to view the data. So now the task usage view is now showing you under each task the actual cost item. So in this case, for the project meetings, the only cost item is the refreshments. You go to the planning and material purchase. Under the drawing of the plan, the only expense is the architect. Then you go to the buying of materials. You have got the admin officer as well as transportation. Building or foundation, you have got bricklayer, bricks, cement, and sand. So you can see that all these items are being summarized onto the task itself. And then the total for the tasks is being summarized on the summary task here. Construct the foundation. So we can see that MS Project gives us quite a number of ways in which we can look at the information that we've entered, because it is so much just for one screen. So you have to decide from which view you'd like to see this information. So you need to be very comfortable always going back to your Gantt chart, and then you decide, what exactly do I want to see? Do I just want to see the total costs per task? Do I want to see the usage per task? In other words, the individual resources per task? Or do I want to see it from a resources point of view? Then that is what is going to determine which view you go to first. So once you decide it's going to be a task view, you select the view, in this case task usage, and you get your tables. So if the first time you open the table is not the cost table, you simply go to view, and then under data you can switch from the cost to the entry. So you can see how flexible you are in selecting the view from which you can see your costs. Let us look at one more view that is related to resources. Let's go back to our Gantt chart, and then we start at view, and then on the resource view, instead of starting from the resource sheet, we go to the resource usage. Now under resource usage, we can then go to view and then data tables, and then select the cost. So you can now see that we are now looking at a resource, and we see where that resource was used. So this is why it's called a resource usage view. So take, for example, the ones with multiple tasks. The general worker, he was doing the digging of foundation and he poured concrete. The bricklayer, he built foundation walls, he built the walls, fit door frames, fit window frames, plastering, fit tiles, fit windows. So we are now seeing the cost according to how this resource was used on the various tasks. But if it was a task usage, not resource usage. Here would be having the task, and then under the task we'll see the resources to say digging of the foundation. Then we say we used a general worker, we used a bricklayer, we used such and such. So it is important for you to understand just these terminologies. Resource usage means I start with a resource on top, and then I see where that resource was used, and then the cost. But if it is a task usage, I start with a task here on top, then I see all the resources that were used on that task and their related costs. Okay, I think we've seen enough views. You are free to play around with your project so that you can see all the different views. So the trick is to simply go to the view and then you check any of these views. From there, once you are in the view, then you simply go to the view again and you look for the table and you select the cost table. Okay, so make sure you do some practice, just playing around and seeing how your costs have been allocated at different levels. So let's meet in the next module